welcome to the Silver Bullet Live show. I'm Rob, joined by three other people here. I'm going to let them introduce themselves here. We'll start off with Sherri. Go ahead.
Sherri Jensen, Silver Bullet USA.
All right, we also have Dawn. Go ahead, Dawn.
Dawn Grantham, Silver Bullet UK.
All right, and then we have Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle.
All right, so I want to welcome everybody, of course. If you're new to the program, this is a live show. You can go ahead and ask your questions as we're going along with this. We'll be monitoring the questions, so feel free to type those in, and we can stop at any time. The show is recorded. Will be uploaded to YouTube shortly after the broadcast has ended. So today's topic, we're going to be talking about the cool little punch tool, and we're going to start off by showing some of these designs here, to gain your interest on what you can actually create with the punch tool. So here's a nice dragon butterfly, and you can see the size on this thing too. And we're going to talk a little bit about this, as well as this right here. And there it is at night, so that's kind of cool. All right, so here's that punch tool that created those projects, and I'm going to let Dawn here talk to us why they designed it and what all comes with it.
We had quite a few customers who do a lot of pergamano work. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's punching through vellum a series of small holes to make patterns and designs. It's very tedious and long-winded and hard on the hands. So we came up with this to do a similar job. What you get with it is the actual punch tool comes with the small size needle, and then there's an optional large size needle and insert to go with it.
All right, yeah, we got some photos here coming up with that. So that's the punch tool disassembled. So you have going from left to right. Maybe you can describe what we have here, Dawn.
Left to right, we have the large insert, the normal insert that comes with the punch tool along with the spring, the two main pieces, one of which slots inside the other, the large size needle, and the normal small needle.
Yes, and we have a video here showing you how you can swap out needles, and if you happen to have the large needle, you will have to change that spring over to that larger piece.
And can I mention something here, Rob?
Yeah, go
For
ahead.
those of you in the United States that have already received the punch tool, you probably would have gotten two needles. If you didn't, well, I take everybody has so far. They are the same size. We thought we had a small, a medium, and a large. It ended up that when we get them punched, that they end up being the same size. So both of the needles that you have, the small ones are the punch the same size hole. So when we run out of those, we will just be sending the one needle and the large needle.
Yeah, so if you guys are ever trying to swap out needles with this thing, it's very simple. They have two screws on either side. You can loosen up both. Comes with an Allen wrench, and then the top plunger just pops right off. You do want to be careful because there is a spring right there. As you can see, it comes right out. The needle is being held together by two more grommet screws. You'll just have to loosen those up. Don't take them out all the way, and then you'll just go ahead and insert the other needle inside that. And if the needle fits with that, with the one that has the spring that you see there, you don't need to swap to the larger one. So as you can see, the needle just pops right out, and then you can pop the new one in. And it's just a simple reverse order. Place the needle in, lock down it with the screws, and then you can place it back in the holder itself. So pretty easy to swap out when you plan on using two needles. And I want to let Dawn here talk about why we need to have two needles. What can I get with two needles as opposed to just one?
What you get is different size holes. In the dragonfly image here, the pattern inside the wings is done with the small standard insert, and the outline is done with the larger needle, and you can quite clearly see a difference in the hole size. So it gives you more range for different designs.
All right, and here's another example.
I believe that was done on vellum. Was that Michelle?
Yeah, this is, I used Dawn's Dragonfly file as well. And again, I use the smaller needle for the inside of the scroll work, and the larger needle was used for the outer edge. And for the heart and the flower example, those were basic shapes from the SCAL library. And I used the larger needle with different rhinestone settings. The large needle size, I used a velocity of 60, and my force was 224. And the heart, I used a stone setting of 0.080 millimeters with a spacing of 2.0 millimeter. And that I didn't like. It produced an undesired effect when using the Vellum measure media because the holes are too large.
All right, Barbara here, she has a question for you guys, and it says, are they sewing machine needles?
They are, yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And one of the items that you'll need whenever you're doing the punch is, of course, you don't want to do this on a mat directly, and so you're going to need to have an embossing mat. And if you're not familiar with an embossing mat, that's what it is right here, and it's very very soft. So as you can see, I'm just pushing down here, and that's what allows that punch to not ruin a mat and gives it that nice punch effect in the paper.
Can I mention something real quick to Barb regarding the needles? By the way, those needles are cut down. You can't take just a standard needle that you purchase in the store and put it in the tool because it'll be too long. Dawn, is that correct? You haven't found any that in there?
Some may be the correct size. Others will need to be cut down with an angle grinder or something of that nature.
Okay, good. I just don't want people to think they could run out to the store and purchase them and stick them in there and that they'd work, but you have to check it out.
All right. So because the embossing mat is not sticky, you're going to need to secure it somehow, and painter's tape works well, masking tape works well to hold those down. As you can see, the paper right here, you just place it on the outer edge and it will secure that paper. So if you're wanting to know what the punch tool looks like in action, Michelle here, she filmed this for us, and you can just see that needle move up and down, and it's just going down in what Dawn calls does a little wiggle. So those are all just little tiny circles that needle's going down. It's drawing a very tiny little circle. Anything else you want to add to that, Dawn?
No, only that Michelle and I seem to use different size rhinestone stones for it. I tend to stick to a 0.2 and 0.3 millimeter, but Michelle has had success using larger size stones as well. So experiment with your media and see what you achieve.
Yes, and towards the end of the video, we have some helpful tips as far as creating rhinestones, as far as the size and spacing.
Michelle, did you have anything you wanted to say about this in regards to the paper, or when you were using Bazzill? Did you have an issue?
Yeah, I used the Bazzill's Premium Cardstock, and it has a texture on one side and it's smooth on the other. And what I wanted was the reverse side of the punch to show on the front of my lantern. So I placed the textured side down on the punching, and I punched on the smooth side of the cardstock. And I found out that when I was using a smaller size needle, I wasn't producing the effect I wanted, so I increased my rhinestone size to 0.70 millimeters with a spacing of 2.0 millimeters, and that produced the effect I wanted to show the light through for the holes, because the holes weren't large enough because the cardstock is so thick.
Yeah, it was an excellent job. It's a beautiful piece.
Thank you.
And we all learned something new.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're wondering what these kind of files look like in either SureCutSlot or whatever program you use, here we'll show a quick video. We're going to just zoom in really tight, and this happens to be one of Dawn's files, and we'll have a link towards the end showing you where it's at. So I'm just zooming in here, and you can see that these are just plain old circles, and I'm going to go ahead and do a quick cut preview so you can see what it looks like, and that's how small those tiny little circles are. So that needle is going to go down, make that small circle, and that's how it creates the punch effect.
And because the holes are so small, it is doing a wiggle in place rather than trying to cut a circle.
Yes. All right, so we're going to show a full project here. Actually, we're going to show two full projects, and we're going to let Dawn here walk us through everything here.
Okay, it's a battery-powered tea light holder. You need a reasonable weight cardstock. I used a 250 GSM, and the size of cardstock you need for that is 12 by 12. Then you need a smaller piece of vellum, a battery tea light, and some tape or glue to put the thing together. For the first step, it's going to be scoring the fold line on the back of the card. Speed of 800, force of 9. I use the detail blade, and you need to make sure that you're in WYSIWYG so the fold line will line up with the cut. So this is the full file, and we're going to turn off all but the fold lines. I used a detail blade, so a blade offset of 0.6 and an overcut of 0.5. And this is doing the cutout of the shape, I think. Oh no, that's the fold lines. My apologies. It's not the card base, it's there's a lot of fold lines to make up the box. The next step is cutting the box shape. Speed again 800, force I used 117, detail blade again, and again WYSIWYG. So this is the card base that we're cutting with quite intricate cuts on it. Again, I chose to use the detail blade.
Now, is that real time, Dawn, that you filmed that? Was that edited at all for speed?
I might have speeded it up a little.
Okay. So, all right. After you complete that, we'll go on to step 3.
That's cutting out the 3 rectangles of vellum to make the sides of the tea light. Speed again 800, force 57, and detail blade. What I am doing here is just expanding the layer so that I can turn off the punch part.
All right, so step 4, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. For the next step, it's punching the vellum, so it needs to be on the embossing mat. The speed, I do advise that you keep below 100. The force, I used 200. It's the small insert, and for this, I used origin because I'm doing just the punch and I wanted to line up on the vellum where I wanted the area to be punched. And you must make sure that you take your blade offset and your overcut to 0. I do think that the punch tool is particularly pretty when it's done on vellum, because not only does it punch the hole, but it makes the translucent vellum, it turns it into a white colour as well, so you have the double effect, both the punched hole and the change in colour.
And I don't know if you guys can see this, but the needle on there is just barely just sticking out.
About a millimetre.
Yeah, it's very,
you want to
very
keep
close.
it down to that amount, so that as the punch tool is lowered, you've only got the very tip of the needle contacting the media before the spring-loaded cover comes into effect, and that's to prevent ripping of the paper. Looking at that video, I will actually just point out that the pinch wheel you see in shot is not in the lowered position. Don't run your pinch wheels over any of the media when you're doing the punch tool, because with being on the embossing mat, it will leave a distinctive track mark behind.
Yeah, it barely just rides over the embossing mat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I should have moved it out of the way, but I didn't think.
Yeah, I didn't have for mine either.
Yeah, it gets pretty thick when you have the mat and the foam underneath those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's not marking it there, but it just looks like it's running over it. That's why I wanted to.
Well, it's rolling. It's just rolling. It's pulling it along because of how thick it is. Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's
You do get a very nice clean punch.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And now it's finally step 5. We get to see it all pieced together.
Yeah, which is done I use double-sided tape and glue. One thing that we do want to point out here is this is for a battery tealight. Do not put an open flame inside a cardboard holder like this, or it'll all be a mess. So here I'm just putting on tape to stick down the vellum inserts.
Oh, that wonderful score tape.
Oh, is that what you call it?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
What's a great invention?
I like this red backed one because it's a very strong one.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
People who attend my retreats will know that I'm actually, by preference, a wet glue user, but I used double-sided tape on this simply to speed up the assembly time, because otherwise I'd have been holding stuff in place while it was drying.
Mm.
That's the punched piece of vellum going in. Now with this, you can choose which side of the vellum you want to be the front. So you can have the piece that was down so that the holes are sticking out, or you can go with the holes being on the inside. It's just personal preference as to which you've done. I've used both on this type of piece. Then I'm just folding all the score lines.
You did the score lines with the detail blade?
Yes. I will score with whatever blade is in there for what I'm doing with the cutting.
Okay.
And we don't recommend that for anybody until they are really good at what they're doing.
I was going to ask you, is there a special technique?
Yeah,
what
it's
you
a
have to
learned
do?
technique. Yeah,
Uh,
I've done it before too, and if you're not really careful, you're going to cut right through those score lines.
It's almost like a kiss cut.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
A very rough guide is 10% of the cutting force, but it does still make a big difference depending on what the media is, so it's best to test.
Mm-hmm.
And here I'm just sticking the sides of the box together. I chose to use wet glue to put on the top and bottom of the pieces, simply because it gives me a little time to make sure that I've got it centered exactly. The final step is to put on the little catch that keeps the door closed. And that you can see here, so it then opens up so you can put your tea light in and out. And the
Not an open flame.
Yeah, and the little strap there keeps it securely closed. And there's your finished piece.
Very nice.
Janice, she says, oh, Dawn, what kind of glue is that? That has a very tiny tip.
It does have a very fine tip. It's actually called a fine tip glue applicator, and you buy the bottles empty and put your own glue in. So I just use the cheapest PVA glue I can get my hand on, because I find that what makes the difference is that fine tip, and it never blocks up either. If you're in the UK, they are available on my website.
Say again, Michelle?
I said I use those bottles as well because the tips are so fine. You could, especially for flowers, you could really get in really close with some of the cuttings because they're very thin.
Yeah, they are. They're extremely good.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you get the bottles in the U.S., Michelle?
You could order them really at any craft place. I think I got the last set of bottles. I think I got was at Dick Blick's. I got them at.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was Jana's follow-up question: is where might I order from?
I knew that was coming.
In the US? Ah, right. She's happy now. Okay, the Peacock Feathers project, which is the next one. For this, I used a 250 GSM cardstock as the base for the card and also for the piece that's punched. And then a smaller piece in a darker colour, which is just simply the mat for the punched area to fit onto. And then you also want some chalk or some pastels and a pen.
All right, step one.
Step one is cutting the card base. So we score it first at a low force and then cut at a higher one. You want to make sure you're using WYSIWYG so that the two cuts line up. So there's the fold line. Then we turn on the cut line for the card.
So going from the score to the cut, there's no adjustment on the blade itself. It was just
No,
force only.
just the force.
All right, very cool. All right, step two.
Step two is cutting the mat for the punched area. Again, a speed of 800. I used a force of 60 for this, and it can be either WYSIWYG or Origin. This is just the larger of the two squares in the file.
All right, step three.
Step three is the smaller square we cut out. We're punching, so you want a speed of 100 or less. That is quite thick cardstock, it's quite dense, so I used a force of 250. Make sure that you have no offset and no overcut, and that you're using WYSIWYG to line up with the corner for the origin so that it's set in the correct place. So I'm just transferring onto page 2, and I'm turning off all bar the punched area. This again is done with the smaller of the two needles because I wanted to keep those holes very fine.
So notice you got all four corners taped up on this one.
Yes. Yeah, I'm using that high force. So although it's unlikely to move being the punch tool, I just wanted to be 100% certain. The next step is embossing the centres of the feathers. For this I used a speed of 800, a force of 160. Again, no offset, no overcut. Use WYSIWYG, and I used 3 passes. I prefer to use a multiple pass at a lower force than risk punching straight through the card. So I'm turning off the punched area and putting on the centres of the feathers. And you can see that each pass makes a successively deeper line. Then it's writing the greetings, which is a speed of about 250, force of about 20. Again, no offset, no overcut, and use WYSIWYG. First step is to add some colour, which you can do with either chalk or pastels. I prefer to use a little cotton wool ball applicator, and it's just rubbing gently over the areas that you want to be coloured.
Dawn, are you using the Pebbles chalks? Is that the chalks you're using to?
These are Dovecraft ones.
Oh, okay.
I think they're same difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just whichever I happen to pick up first that I use.
Mm-hmm. And they last a pretty long time too.
They last an awful long time because you only use such a small amount. Dust off any excess chalk that you've got. And then I decided to intensify the colour a little bit in the centre, which you can just do with a second coat. Now, if you're like me, you've probably put some, oops, we're missing that stage, okay. If you're like me, you've probably put some dirty finger marks from the chalk on the card. The plastic rubbers you can get will take that off very cleanly and easily. So stick the punch part onto the dark card mat. And then that onto the card base. Ah, this might be the bit where I rub some finger marks off. Yeah. The chalk comes off very well using those. And there's the finished card.
Beautiful. Have I seen that card in person yet?
No, but you can do if you wish.
I just thought I had.
Don't know. I really couldn't tell you.
All right, so not only can you punch paper, but you can punch some metal as well. And I actually was doing, I did this one. I'm sort of proud of myself.
Hats off to Rob.
I followed
Really good.
Dawn's YouTube video, and I had some metal laying around, and as you can see, it turned out pretty good, I thought anyway. And
It did.
and something that Dawn brought up as well is you can see on here that the punch tool didn't penetrate the entire metal, but it gave a nice rounded effect. So I did the exact same thing that she did, except use this material. But I'm not going to chalk this up though.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not that crafty.
you're getting better.
So we asked Michelle to find some metal laying around the house. So go ahead, Michelle. You can explain this.
Yeah, for 2 days I spent punching different things, testing different settings and media, and of course I didn't have any metal sheets, so I decided to try a soda can. I rinsed out the can and I let it drain upside down for a while in the strainer. Used heavy-duty scissors to cut the tops off, and then make a slit down the side. Again, I wanted the back side of the punch to show on the front of my design, so I laid the metal side down and I punched on the printed side. And I used the large needle for the outside punch because I used Dawn's dragonfly file, and then the smaller needle for the inside work. And I think the large needle I used a velocity of 60, and I believe my force was 206. And for the small needle, same velocity of 60, and my force was 236.
And it's a lovely effect.
And then the rhinestone setting was 0.70, and the spacing on that was 2.00.
We do have a lot of people that use aluminum cans.
Mm-hmm.
So who knew a Pepsi Max from 1980 could look so good, huh?
Yeah, it really does look good. I'm going to have to try that myself.
And alcohol inks would look really nice applied to the metal. It'd be really pretty.
So we have a few tips out here for you folks if you're going to try this. Stuff that's already pre-built in SCAL that may help you with this, and I suggest this to anyone, is create your own presets when it comes to the different holders in the blades, because when you're doing an embossing, you want a certain setting. When you're doing, the 60-degree plus long shaft, you want a different setting. So the best easy way, so you don't have to memorize all these numbers, is of course create a preset. And this video right here shows you how you can do that. So basically, I went down to custom preset, and over here for this one in particular, we're doing the punch tool. Okay. So you can change the overcut and the blade offset to what you need, and for that tool you need zeros for both. You hit that plus sign, and now you can just go up here and you can name your preset, and it will always be in there until you decide to remove it. So that's SCAL tip number 1 for you folks out there. All right. So not only can you purchase those files from Dawn, but you can also take some SVG line art, for example, and you can create a rhinestone effect. And I'm going to let Michelle handle this. So this is the rhinestone that you created, right, Michelle? Or was this a Dawn file? I forget.
That's Dawn's butterfly file that I used for that project.
Okay. Okay. So we utilized her butterfly.
Correct.
Okay.
And then once I finished punching it, I removed it from the embossing mat. I used a Martha Stewart edge punch for the top, and I used some quick dry adhesive glue for the back of the sides. And then I added some bling to the center of the butterfly.
Love the bling, Michelle.
And that is beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Yes.
And
Is that a candle in there, Michelle?
No. Come on, Michelle,
No.
tell them what it is.
My battery tealight wasn't strong enough to, because it's very tall, the lantern, so it wasn't strong enough to produce the effect I was looking for to light the lantern. So I actually took my iPhone and I placed it on top.
Just another use for iPhone.
Yeah. And it worked. It looked nice.
Beautiful.
And the setting on that, I think I used a velocity that was 55. Force, I believe, was 174 and large needle. Rhinestone was 0.77 or 70, and spacing was, I believe, 2.00 as well.
All right, so Michelle recorded how you can create rhinestones in Shortcuts. So I'm going to go ahead and let her explain what she's doing in here.
Here I'm just going to bring in Dawn's file and just Shortcuts a lot. And I'm just moving the butterfly to the bottom of the mat. And just resizing. And there's 2 layers to Dawn's file, and you just click the down arrow, and then I selected the 1 layer, and I'm going to apply a shadow layer to it. And these are the settings I used. And now I'm going to apply the rhinestones.
And this is again where we'll suggest people using different sizes of rhinestones for different effects, especially on different files.
Yeah, because the cardstock was so thick, that's why I used a larger size. But for Vellum, you want a smaller size smaller size setting.
Right.
And then you're going to hide the wall layer, and then you're going to go to the cut setting. Of course, I used WYSIWYG. And I also used no offset for the blade and no overcut. Now I'm hiding the first layer, and I'm going to cut the shadow layer and repeat the same steps.
Yeah, so I'm going to rewind the video here. Okay, so keep this in mind here because we're going to show you a quick chart. So you have the stone size and the stone spacing, and we made a chart. Dawn has suggestions on what you should use according to what size when you're using the punch tool. But it's always great to experiment with various sizes, like Michelle and Sherri brought up. So here's that Rhinestone recommended settings that Dawn has. So of course we have the stone size right here and the stone spacing. So if you choose 0.2 millimeters for your stone size, you may want to have your stone spacing to be 1.5. And I can let Dawn explain you said 0.4 is probably the largest you would go when creating.
0.4 is the largest I would go. That's when I was doing a sample for a customer who wanted to actually sew with embroidery thread. So I did make it slightly larger, but normally I stick to 0.2 for the small insert and 0.3 for the large one. But as Michelle showed, different media, different results.
Yes. All right, so sort of in review, we got the you have the tealight of Dawn's as well as the peacock feathers that we did, and of course you can purchase those on Dawn's website. And if you'd like more information about the Silver Bullet machine as well as the punch tool, you can go to the silverbulletcutters.com, and depending upon your location up there at the top, you can choose if you're USA bound or Canada and stuff. You can go to That Scrap Ink. It'll be a link up there. So Sherri runs that, Dawn runs the UK, and then you have Joe down there in Australia. So global here. And you can also check out the project galleries there. You can see those same photos that are up there. And we also wanted to remind people, and I'll let Sherri go ahead and explain the Penny Duncan.
Yeah, Penny Duncan is doing a blog post on usually on Sundays, and she's going to try to do a follow-up of whatever tools we used or whatever process we used in the show. Then the following Sunday, she will follow that up with a complete project that will be shown at her blog. So everybody go check that out.
All right. So we're going to go ahead and end the recording.